what I'm going to do is I have a bunch of images that I have already made, most of them within this last year. I'm going to go through those to show the creativity, if you will, and get the creativity in your mind enhanced, just as to what possibilities there are. And then I will show you how I do some images, and they're not always going to be the same. You could have the exact same image standing right next to me, and it's not going to be processed the same. So, all right, Joe. So I'm going to try to hit share screen. Fitting what I would like to do to it now that I'm in doing stuff a little bit more creatively. So this is where I took the swirl and just made a slight swirl on the thing to give it something different. We all strive, I think, to come up with creative images that are different. Showing a lot of flowers, but not everything has to be flowers. This is fireworks, and how you can take fireworks, put in the swirl, and come up with something that is definitely different from what anybody else would have. Same thing here. Different type of swirl, but it still gets the point across that it's a firework. Of course, New Hampshire had plenty of ice. This was back in 2008. And just taking that image and giving it a swirl. And then again, brings it into a different level of just some ice. They can tell what it is, but it's different. It's another one, same thing. You can't get everything in focus. So I tried to get something in focus and then do something creative with swirls to make it go to a different level. Another one, different method, different temperature. Neighbor next to my house in Pittsfield, big ice storm, and we had all those beautiful icicles. Nice picture, but I had many of them, so I thought I would do something different. And did a zoom, which is one of the features on the Topaz, and then give it a twirl here.
Bob, can I
Yes.
Bob, can I interrupt just for one moment?
Yes.
Before you continue, could you talk just a minute or two or 30 seconds on what tools you're using to do your images?
Well, okay. I had put that in I thought I had put that in the email. I'm using Topaz Studio 2. And that's what I think every one of the images has been done in. And there are multiple filters and looks in there, but primarily we're dealing with the swirl, which is equivalent, sort of, to the Photoshop twirl. I went and looked at it and with the Photoshop, and I just couldn't come up with the same results. Maybe Dick can, but not me. So that's, like I said, that's the tool is strictly to use Topaz.
Okay.
And this is the same as this previous image, just taken and put it in a lot more pastel colors by using a different blending mode. This is, I think, I forget now. I'm gonna get rid of your pictures here. How do I get rid of those? Okay. It's my notes here, yeah. That's the exclusion version of the of using the light blending modes. Another fireworks. DC just taking that nice picture, but just taking it and taking the center and doing a little bit of a swirl with it. Many different things that you can do. This happens to be a little bit out of order here, maybe, but those are Black-Eyed Susie's. No.
Bob,
Yes.
Bob, could you go back one, please, to the fireworks? I have a question.
Yes. Go ahead.
Oh, how did you get the effect on just part of it? Are you doing a selection and a layer via copy and working on that and then blending it in?
Topaz doesn't generally use layers, although you could say that a mask makes a layer,
Okay.
but they don't call it a layer. But in most of these, I am using, not everyone, in most of these, I am using a mask to put a swirl on top of the image underneath.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, not a problem. Sorry, I didn't mention that. This is with no mask, if you will, just a straight from the image. This is doing with, like I said, with a swirl with a little mask on it. That's out of order. Sorry about that. That was the original. That was the original picture. Even do something here with milkweed seeds and using the mask and a zoom feature, the zoom filter, and then the swirl. Different one, but yet the same procedure. I find that the zoom makes everything, and depending on the amount of the zoom, it makes everything very soft and with lines that it will create. Just do a full zoom, twirl on that one. This is with a different filter that Topaz has, and it's called a liquid color. And that's something else, like I said, just adds a different flavor to it. Joe, you're still awake, right? Joe, it's a truck. He must be gone. He fell asleep. All right. So anyway, this was an example that a lot of objects you can't use unless you can focus in on. I tried landscapes, it doesn't really work. But this is a truck with some beautiful paint, and I made it, for Joe, but he fell asleep. Using on a lost my brain here. The kind of flowers that you're growing, Karen.
Is it a dahlia?
Dahlia, yes. Sorry about that. It's a dahlia close up that that I had taken, but it wasn't perfectly taken. And you can see the back edge all along the back edge there is out of focus. So how do you do something with that? Well, you go ahead and take an imperfect picture and highlight along make the mask along those ridges and the teeth that are sticking up there, or whatever you want to call those, as far as the flower is concerned. And then you go ahead and just twirl those features of the flower. Same thing here with this one. Different swirl, And you have all sorts, you'll see, you have all sorts of abilities to change the amount of the swirl and where the swirl is. This was just taken in my backyard, showing something that you could do with an old wheel and distorting it, if you will, but it wasn't perfectly sharp. Okay, just nice flowers, but it's just flowers. So I thought that I would bring in some leading lines. And I have to give credit now to Karen, because she, a year ago or so, told me about I should flip the leading lines around. And on this Topaz program, on the Swirl, you have the ability to have it either a minus number or a plus number, and that changes the direction of the swirl. And in many cases, this one really works much better as you're leading the lines in from the bottom left-hand corner. And thank you for that good idea, Karen. And flowers, but was nothing I could do about the grass on the sides. You're going to clone something, or just go ahead and make believe that they're all perfect. And in the center, this one wasn't. I didn't have it directly in the center of the image. When you're focusing or when you're composing, if you have something in the middle, sometimes that works out better. Not every time, but just that's an option to have. And here's a case here where it's not perfectly in the center, but not bad. It's still not sharp, but part of it is because the mask and was going over it, and so that's what disrupted that a little bit. And you can change that zoom there, so you have lots of detail or very little detail. This was in case Paul showed up tonight. I don't know whether Paul showed up, Marion. Tell him there's a bug.
He's here.
He's here.
Okay, there's his bug.
Yeah, nice.
And so I couldn't come up with a good swirl on that. So this is an impressionistic filter that I have in Topaz, but there is in the background, you can see there is a faded swirl, and that's, you can change that, the opacity of it. Clouds, you can do clouds. Why not do a swirl on the clouds? It gives you an interesting, if you have interesting clouds in color. Now, we'll get into a little bit of weird stuff here, but it looks like a piece of driftwood, right? So this is what I made of it yesterday. Took me about a half hour. Using, I think, 7 swirls. And I only used one mask, and that was on the far right there where there's a knothole type of thing. But that's, if you want to make an abstract type of thing, although someone could probably guess what that is if they didn't, if they just saw the bark and stuff. Things that tend to have long, skinny lines tend to work best for the swirls. This is another piece of driftwood, and you can do a simple swirl on that and come up with definitely a better looking image than with the driftwood the way it, is raw. I did these in Georgia Driftwood Beach, and did this one, and I went in black and white. And you can see on the right-hand side there that that's the original, and I only put a mask on that part, and then the rest of it I gave the numerous swirls. Tree, and we have snow down here, And I just thought that it was missing something on the right-hand side, so I added my own polar vortex. And so, like I said, come up with different ideas. I forget what kind of flower this is, but it was a very dainty flower. And
The tree.
yep. What's that?
Is that a tree or a flower?
This is it. Well, this is a
You had
very
a
tiny
tree before that.
before that. This one?
No,
No,
there
the
was a
snow.
tree with snow.
Yes, that's a tree. A cherry tree.
But we didn't see that before.
I saw it.
We
I
didn't
guess I
see
went,
it.
Seeing the
Swirl.
driftwood.
I guess I went too
Right
fast.
there.
So that was the swirl.
That's not a swirl.
That's just the tree right now.
Hmm.
Now it's the
There you
swirl.
go.
Okay.
Mm.
That file's not any bigger than the others, so not sure. All right. Thank you for telling me that. We'll try to be more careful about that. Except this is just, some of these ended up being out of order, I guess, when I went ahead and tried to make them in by date or something. So like I said, that's just a simple swirl. On a clematis, which has a very nice center. And I put a mask on the center and gave it a swirl. And the components of the center, if you will, basically stay together. That's what it originally would have looked like. And I probably had a little bit of a zoom on there also. Lots of flowers. And just tried to do something in the middle with all the colors. Now, except all these colors, you can make those be a very fine lines by swirling quite a bit, or make it so you can see through more opacity. Another flower here with swirls around the outside edges. I think I don't have the original on that one. A peony that I went ahead and swirled and then used a Cezanne is the name of another type of look that Topaz has filters and they have looks, and they can be used. Generally speaking, you do a filter and then you can go in and go to the look, and we'll go there. Group of peonies, not perfectly sharp, but I picked a sharp one and worked around that, and the rest I gave a swirl. This was a multiple image, a multiple exposure that I wasn't thinking or counting properly. And I picked up another type of plant that didn't really go good with the orange poppies there. So I just went ahead and put the zoom on to soften it, and then a swirl. Taken in the yard here for lavender. And I think this was either 7 or 10 shots. And put a swirl on, put on the zoom and then a swirl. That's what I do with a lot of images. And that just think that gives me a lot more ability to do some of the other creative stuff. More lavender. And just a area that's sharp, and then just a little bump out thing. I think that's marginal. I probably could have taken that one out, but someone might like that idea, and that's what I'm hoping for. I want to learn from you guys. Once you guys learn to do this, then you'll have some ideas. And I say, why didn't I think of that? So some of these yellow flowers here, which I think are a false sunflower type of thing, and put them into a swirl. And there is one of the looks that automatically turns things black and gives you a neon type of look. Dill plant, and just take that swirl after you did a little bit of zoom, and that's what you can come up with. Cone flowers, pretty clean background in that case. Not always, you're going to see forward here that they're not always that way. Were you able to see that transition?
Mhm.
Okay, so basically you're talking two flowers, and when you do the when you're putting the mask on and you're doing a swirl, you can do multiple swirls, and then it makes a clone, if you will, of the thing in the center, and then you can move it around and come up with your own configurations. Just a beautiful bee balm, except that the rest of the stuff's in the way. So what do you how do you deal with that? So in this case, I just highlighted the good one, and the rest I put in to a little bit of creativity. Likewise, only one flower is sharp, but I'm able to go ahead and swirl and bring in some other details. Cone flowers, fortunately, are relatively high, and so I was able to get an uncluttered background. And so in this case, I gave them multiple swirls, and so you get them dancing, if you will. Dancing cone heads, I call that one. Blanket flowers, nice and colorful, but in nice skinny, tall stems, which make for some interesting designs. And in this case, I just put one in the center. Sometimes I use the stems and sometimes not, but you just basically take the mask and a brush basically and go along the length of the stem as far as you want to go, and that will that'll take that mask and put it in the mask. A lot of the mask you also have the ability to invert, so you can do the inside or the outside type of thing. I tend to do more inside than outside. Getting into the bee balm stuff here, and just an awful lot of stuff, and there's not much to pull out for good subjects. So I used the color and created all those swirls, and so that you at least have something versus looking when you're taking that picture, out in the field, you don't necessarily go over and look at all the plants and say, all the flowers, and say, okay, which ones are good, which ones aren't, and stuff like that, in terms of how you pick out the images that you want to use. One flower there, and that's another clematis, and I don't know if it's Grace there, if she's probably going to say that's very oversaturated, but yes, that's Bob. Bob does oversaturated stuff. Cone flower, not perfectly sharp, but it doesn't matter if you're going to do that to it. And that's what, that's what I'm talking about a lot of times, is coming up with a different image than what if it was perfectly sharp. I still think that this type of thing would do better, unless you got a judge or a critique that doesn't like creative type of stuff. Basic cone flower there, and give it a swirl, and it's easy enough on the inside to put that where you put the mask, and then the outside turns. Or you can do it another way and have it go that way. There's multiple options. This is a little vase that I have that I shoot some pictures of, and it works good for the black-eyed Susies because the colors go well. But the background wasn't as good as I liked or should have shot. So I just go ahead and shoot it that way, and it's more like a caterpillar or something. More cone flowers, and put a swirl in. And then again, like I said, it's taken, depending on where you put that swirl, it's taken a portion of that center and duplicating, if you will, but distorting it. Cone flowers, nice soft look, I think, in terms of with leading lines that bring you up to the flower, the top of the flower. The light rays that are coming out of the top are basically produced by the strength of the zoom filter and where you put the zoom filter. I will show you that that's how that gets there. You can remove it if you don't want it. Taking multiple cone flowers and making an image of some sort out of that.
Oh,
So in most cases, these can not easily be duplicated by me or virtually anybody else, just because of you'll see, of the settings. That is a bunch of flowers that doesn't seem to have too much of, there's one flower over there, I guess that's on the left, but I gave up on that one and said, okay, I'll just put them all into a filter and make something out of it. See, the cone flowers and the bee balm are getting very ragged as the heat of the summer came, and that was in July. So what do you do with them? And I put a graduated filter on the bottom and some swirls, and came up with something maybe that better than what I had in the camera. The cone flower, and depending on how you do the mask, I think I took I may not have used any mask at all, just given it a swirl, and that's what you get. If you take that and put a thin line with the mask, just to take a draw a line, and you go ahead and then the rest of it gets swirled, and you can come up with your own types of images that are definitely unique. That one I tried to make a heart, because a lot of photographers like to find hearts in flowers. So I decided that I would make a heart. So I ended up shooting quite a few. A lot of times it's windy, and so I'm using it at a relatively high speed. That's like at 640 on that ISO. So that is just a swirl. Then I can take a couple of them and make something like that. It's all your creativity. Said here we're talking basic black-eyed Susies, and go ahead and really pump up the the zoom filter to give you that up to the top there, and then on the left side, you're going to use a swirl. Now we're getting into zinnier season, and went ahead and just did a swirl and pardon me, the zoom and a swirl. So you can go ahead and put that in any kind of configuration you want. It does distort things. Like this case here, I get two flowers next to each other, and I was able to, not easily, but to create two swirls and get them to look almost like a reflection there, and they're caressing each other or something, but they're taking something out of nothing. Just a single flower, and when you swirl it, it distorts it and it looks down again, looks down. Using some Cosmos. One is destined for the, well, they're both past season, if you will. But go ahead and use the filter on them. There's an expressionism filter that I use quite a bit because it puts in lines and curls and comes up with something more zinnias, and see how they're I've put that zoom filter on and then the swirl. Multiple exposures that both Tony Sweet and Charles Needles that I've been didn't really realize it at first, but those are guys that I've been sort of following, and as I've been going in this path here of the creativity, both of them use multiple exposures. And so it was a little more difficult to learn to do it, but I've got a better handle on it nowadays. And sometimes I just leave them like that. Other times I go ahead and take them and see the flower in the middle, the zinnia in the middle. It's still in the middle because I put that mask on it. And you can change how fine all these zoom lines are going to be. Taking that and put in two swirls on that one. Flowers are gone by, so you know, you don't travel, you shoot your pictures in the flowers that are in your yard, and you make the best of it. So that's what I was able to do with those pair. Same thing there. There was a gone past, but there's new ones coming along all the time, and did some did the zoom on this one where the background was somewhat soft, but I went ahead and made this everything pretty much as soft as I could. But yet I still wanted to show the leading lines into the flowers. This is a multiple exposure thing where Tony Sweet had talked about this or shown us to go ahead, and I'm using a Wimberley type of gimbal head on my tripod, and I'm using my 200 to 500 on a lot of these pictures. So it's flower pictures, and I'm using that as my close-up lens. And I'm at the outside of the garden, and I'm able to pick things out and take my time and not be able to wobble around. I'm getting not stable as I used to be. So sitting on a bench and shooting this case with the lens that has a collar on it, and you shoot, turn, shoot, turn, shoot, turn. And that's how you get those type of images. And this is here where I went ahead and took that image and put it on the expressionism filter from Topaz. And when you're taking your lens and you're turning it, basically you're going from horizontal to vertical. And so you're going to have some pictures with your stems not normally looking as you would expect them. But I just went ahead and blurred it all out, put on a special impressionism filter, and made something out of one that would have been just tossed. Same thing. More zinnias. And some of these, basically, this one, I think I had to go ahead and put the mask on each of the orange flowers, depending on what I'm trying to end up with. And what I'm trying to end up with, I don't know that when I open up the image to edit. I don't know necessarily what I'm going to make. When I see something like this, where you've got a long, tall flower, or one in this orange one in the center, then yes, I know I'm gonna do a swirl on that one, but I don't know exactly what I'm gonna come up with until I get started. And that's because the zoom and the swirl do some weird things to the images, and you just have to work with it and get the most out of it. Just trying to make use of everything that I have. Several swirls. I like the on the bottom right. I like the real fine foliage, if you will, and plants of the cosmos, of the stems. Let's see here. You can see there's a bunch of flowers that are gone past, and so I'm just using one of them, but I'm using the colors from the others. And that's the beauty of the zoom, is that you're able to blur that and take those colors and make them very bold or make them more muted, and bring your leading lines into your subject. This is another multiple exposure where there's only, some end up with depending on how well I organize in the zoom of the lens, sometimes you get a complete circle and sometimes you only get a half circle. And that depends on how well you plan for flowers in the upper half of the picture. Another exposure, multiple exposure thing. I think this is probably a 10. And I tried to keep those flowers in the very center. Each time I would need to, as I'm rotating that lens, I needed to still focus, if you will, and align the lens to stay in the center. Not easy. It's a little more of a circle version here. Now this type of thing, these didn't do anything in Topaz at all. These were just in camera. If you see a JPEG up in the top right, the file number of the JPEGs, that's because I'm taking and asking the camera to, once it does that multiple exposure, to make a JPEG of those 7 to 10 images. I used to throw them out or have them just make a final image and only keep the one, but I realized that you couldn't tell necessarily maybe whether the camera made the best image from those 10, or maybe you can just use less than 10, or use some takeouts, if you will. Yeah, no, it's not that one. But you can see there where I only went down so far on the stem on the top one, and that's why it's left floating there. I don't know whether that's objectionable or not, but it's there. You can see that on a lot of the leaves have started to have a mold or some kind of a black spot, black and white spot on them. That's because this is not in my wife's garden. This is in my garden, which is out in the field. So I get a little bit more stuff growing on mine. This is a case where I took these yellow orange cosmos, and I used the paintbrush and put a mask on those, and then I went ahead and did the zoom and swirled. Also have the ability to take a spin. And Topaz, instead of the swirl, there's also a spin, and you can do the inside or the outside, but that's another filter that you can use. It's in the same grouping as the swirl. I think this was that one. Yeah, out of order. A couple other cosmos, only one that's of any decent, the rest of it. So if you go ahead and do a zoom, and then you get rid of those other objectionable items. This is one that I did today. Well, shot it way back on the 9th, but we just created it today when Eileen came in and said, "Gee, I like that. You ought to do something with that. Give that a swirl." Yeah, okay. I think all those white spots are going to be objectionable, but we came up with that, and the moth or butterfly was cooperative, and yep, that's a little tough, maybe a little high on the saturation, but you know, it's taken something that that with just that, you know, that's not going to do much for you. It may be a nice memory, but it's just not a unique picture, and that's what I was trying to make, is unique pictures. All right, so we get through those, and I gotta just switch here to, all right. So we're gonna go through and do some editing on these. So we're going to basically, you go up into photo and edit in, just like you would do for Photoshop, and Topaz plugin is there. Okay. What I try to do is to do your basic editing on the Lightroom, in my case, or you can do it in Photoshop, but do the basic editing before you go into the studio. So then you can add a filter, and there's many filters here. Some essentials, creatives, artistic, stylistic. You know, I tend to use, as you probably noticed from what I was saying, I tend to use stuff more common than other, you know, much more than the others. So that zoom automatically opens up like that. For whatever reason, it does. So now it's time to make a mask. So if we just click on the brush, and the brush is content aware, so you don't have to be perfect. We got a couple little things in the way here. But so that makes a mask. Go back up to the filter. And then we can make that whatever we want. You can go full strength like that. Make it very soft. Or you can bring it down where you still have some detail. And even with that, you still have the opacity slider. So you can do some change, do some stuff there in terms of what you might want to do. Then here on that mask, if you will, I don't know what else to call it, but they don't call it a mask, but that's what it is here. So you can copy, you can paste, you can clear, you can invert, or you can delete. So I copy, and we're gonna go up and we're gonna do another motion blur. We're gonna paste. Our mask. And go back up to the top. I'm going too fast, then yell at me. Then instead of zoom, you can pull down swirl. And then that's not doing anything other than pulling that down the swirl. And it defaults to a over here to a +20, if you will, or the Karen -20. And so and then there's all sorts of options that you can do in terms of how many swirls you want. And you notice that the flowers there that we put the mask on are still staying there. They haven't moved any. So we're gonna go back here and do a -20. And by taking just your hand here or the mouse type of thing, you can take that and put it on that center. And then you can just go ahead and move it around to wherever you want. And as you note, things all around, generally closer than further away, but there is stuff that moves all around to, and there's no way to tell you what to expect. Every picture is going to be different in terms of this particular step. You can go with the center, or you can go ahead and move it around or put multiples in. But that's one of the beauties of that particular filter. And if you get back here and say, I want to go ahead and change I don't like all those orange things there, too much orange. So I'm just going to go ahead and do a finer zoom, if you will, or all the way up to the max zoom. And as you're twisting, I'm going to go back up to this. And as you're doing this swirl angle is what they call that, you can get that to turn and go around and above and do all sorts of different things as to what you want to do with it. And it all depends on the flowers and your own mind as to what you would like to create. But in terms of planning ahead what you want to do, at this stage, I don't think you could plan ahead to exactly know what you're going to do as soon as you see that screen, unless it's one that you've done multiple times with, or multiple flowers or whatever products. any questions on this type of thing? Okay,
No questions, Bob, but it's Grace, and I want to say two things. First is, when you are creating these, it's not like the flower is shot. It's like you're taking the shot flower and building your own creation, and therefore the saturation and the vibrance is totally up to the maker.
yes.
So, go for it.
Oh,
And the
yeah.
other thing is, I have to say, you really piqued my interest. This is intriguing and I'm loving this. So thank you.
All right, even though with the saturations, all right, I win with Grace, all righty.
Hey, Bob,
Yes,
just to put another note on what was just said, and you've mentioned it, it's what the artist wants. The one important factor here is you, the artist, is creating this, not the tool. The tools are there. The tool itself would sit there and could do nothing.
yep, it'll end up in the center every time.
Yep. And you are, and the only way that you're getting good at this, and you are beyond good now, is to do it.
Right, keep on doing it, yep. And
Keep on doing it. But
yeah, and that's what I've been doing. I've had plenty of flowers to go and shoot. And now the thing is where Dick, even though he's talking about and complimenting me on what I've been learning, but he does his, I think, 100% in Photoshop.
yes,
and goes through all sorts of different mathematical things that you have to know and do. And this, I just wasn't able to do it. And when I went to use that twirl filter in Photoshop, and it gives you lines instead of pictures, it gives you lines to show where the twirl's going to be. But it doesn't seem to allow you to do more than one. Maybe it does, but like I said, it just wasn't live action in terms of being able to see what was going to happen.
Photoshop twirl is entirely different, other than it twirls.
Yep.
And you can control what you're doing here, but again, it's a stupid tool, and it's not the tool that's making your image, Robert.
Yep. No, I understand. Thank you, Dick. But and there are instructions, sort of in a manual type of thing, but it still only gives you the basics, and it's very much of a trial and error type of thing. But I still feel very good for them. I'm able to make a unique image, and I can say that very emphatically. It is a unique image every time that I make one of these. You guys go ahead and try to recreate it. And we're going to see here near the end of this that Karen asked me to tell her how I did it. And so I went ahead and recreated it. It was over an hour, and I knew that I had the right in front of me. I had the new and the old one, and it's just not easy, because you're talking these, like here in this swirl angle, whether that is 20 or whether that is 20, 30 or something, that all makes a difference. It moves stuff all around. But this is a tool that I think can bring out the creativity if you have an interest in it. And if you love flowers, then I think that it's easier to grasp flowers than some other subjects. I'm just constantly looking. Like I said, I found the fireworks. That was just by mistake one night. And there's not too many other subjects out there, I think, that I'm just not thinking of, that would work, that you could use these tools on, and the creativity. So, all right. So to basically, to get this, to just accept, you can just hit the accept, and that'll go back in Lightroom. Takes a few seconds here. I will tell you that my computer, yes, it's a Mac, it's only a year old. And I didn't know how many more computers that I would have in my lifetime. And so I did soup this one up a little bit more than the average. So you would find perhaps on what you have for a computer that it crawls a lot slower than what you've seen here. So we're right back into Lightroom, and I have to tell you, one of the weak points, and I've already complained to them, is that they don't have history. So what I have to do is over here in the keywords, and like this image here, you can, I got flowers, lavender color, where it was taken, so Topaz Swirl, and the name of the flower. I don't generally get into a lot of the particulars of what filters I used, but I do try to put in the same basic ones so that I can go back, because believe it or not, and I bet you some of you can believe it, is that our memories don't seem to be working as good as they used to. And so by the time I close out Topaz and it opens up in Lightroom, I've forgotten what filter I used. And you no way to go back. You can go back, you can take this in and open it up again, but it's not going to tell you what you did with it the first time. So that's just a word for the wise. That's if you might, make some notes if you think that you might need the information. All right, so gonna go here. This is somewhat of a simple one, just a single flower. And forget what I was gonna do. Some of these I winged and some of them I didn't in terms of how I was going to do it. Let's see here. I think most of these in my Lightroom here, they're already edited. Now, you add a filter, and you can, when I talked before about making the mask and stuff, you can put the mask in any of these filters. I just generally try to do it in the motion blurs. That's, I don't know why, maybe my mind's a blur, but you can do it in basic adjustments. You can go ahead and do the mask and all of that stuff. We can just try it here and see. So besides the brush, you also have a spot, and that's generally bigger than what you want, but it has some good features. You can do a transition on it to give it more detail. You can make it more round. It is edge aware. And so I don't like necessarily the way it looks in the black and white here, but that's the way it is. We can just see and just hit the apply. And then we're gonna go in and add a filter. And I don't know, most of these others I don't use. Just being honest with you. So there it picked the basic flower, and so that you can zoom that, and then you can go in and add another filter and do the swirl to it. Blur. Now, if you go ahead and you decide to swirl it without the mask, you're gonna get that type of thing versus preserving the flower. If you put the mask on that flower, then that shape of that cosmo would still be there. But since we didn't put on a mask, then it's going to just go ahead and twirl it the way it is. In that some cases, that's fine. I've done something like that without a doubt, and that works. So, all right, that was it on that one. I can just. All righty. Now, as we get further down here, we're going to get into a little more difficult things, if you will. The background, I would say, Dick would say, probably that's a little too busy, Bob. And it is, but sometimes you have a choice of the way that the flower is, where it is facing, that you're going to have stuff back there. You will note that most of my flower stuff, and I've been doing this based on my experience plus from Tony Sweet and Charles Niels. Basically, if you're doing flowers and you have a choice, go out on a cloudy day, high overcast or cloudy. Otherwise, you're not going to see the pictures. I could dig them up, but the shadows and the not so much the shadows, but the light on the flowers behind are generally very objectionable. So it's just best to try to get a cloudy day right after a rain, before it rains. Obviously, the wind gets to be a problem sometimes. This is another one that I shot an ISO 640. I don't have any complaints with the noise on this camera, so I've been using the higher ISOs to stop the motion. And you can see this is at 480 millimeters. So like I said, this was another one that was shot, practically all these are shot on my 200 to 500, and they're all shot pretty much at the 500. And that's got about a 6 to 7 foot is the closest I can get for focus. So that's where I set my bench, so that I'm just that far away, and I'm going to shoot right at the 500 thereabouts. So sometimes I bring it back in on the zoom, but it started off being a wildlife lens, but it's turning into a heck of a macro lens, and it gives you so much better options in terms of being able to focus on another image, or the butterfly comes by and lands on a different flower right next to you, just to take that gimbal head and to go right on to the butterfly. And it's been the best. I got a cheap one. If those that didn't hear the story, I got a cheap gimbal from it's a Chinese version, I'm sure, from Amazon. I think it was like $99 versus the real Wimberley one is set you back 400 or some 500, something like that. But it's doing a great job, and I haven't had any problems with it. And I've just been leaving that on the tripod head, and it's been well worth the money, and it gives me a lot of options. So in this particular image, we're going to edit in Topaz. And I do have one of these other filters that I do use. It's somewhat of a pain sometimes, but it's generally good. It's let's see, do it. It's blur, and what we want to do is to put the brush on the flower. Do a little bit of sloppy job here, but it does pretty well. Okay, So then what we're going to do is have, that's that. You can, oops, that's the wrong thing here. I gotta go back up there. There it is. Okay. So we have this is called blur, and it takes a little while. One of the things that's a little weird about Topaz is if you notice there's a blue line that goes right across the top. Sometimes it's faster than others. That is the software taken in cycling, putting that into that change into effect. So in this case, I was able to go up to quite a bit of the on the scale there, and taken that background and made it soft. You can cut down on the exposure and the highlight. So, you know, it does have some of these other filters built into it that you would find in the normal into your Lightroom. So you don't have to make all of those changes. So you can see here where my my mask wasn't perfect, but it still gives you the ability to take that one filter and to blur out that background. Now, there is another one here. Let's see here. If you don't like that one, you just click up here and click the trash barrel, and it's gone. There's also a very nice undo that goes through step by step, and it that works out good. And if we want to do a, let's get rid of that one. So we're going to do I don't know, maybe Dick knows if there's a fancy definition why the one's called blur and the other one's called the focal blur, but there's two different types of blurs. And so this one, you can see you have a choice of a circular or a tilt shift, and that tilt shift is when you're shooting up or down at something. Is the way I understand it, but I don't ever use that tilt shift. They do have a transition where you can, I don't know why the other thing did come up. Why didn't it come up? There's really there's another ring around it, and that that gives you the ability to transition the blur from your flower or whatever you're doing. I didn't hit this. I hit the center one versus the corner. The corner ones bring it into proper dimension. So you can do a transition for the blur, and so you can make it as close as you want to a flower or object. So that's just another way that you can make that background go soft. Okay. Let's see here. Just gonna cancel that. All right. This is one that these are clove chives, I think is what my wife calls them. They're basically an onion chive type of thing. And I was messing around with these, and I made some swipes up and down, and just to make it an artistic type of thing. And those came out pretty good, but they're basically all soft. Not all of them, but that's because if you look, I shot this at 1/6 of a second at f32. So it's sharp, it's just not, it had some motion involved in it. So one of the things that I guess I will wait. I was going to show you on the sharpening, which is Topaz has another program, but we'll wait on that one, make sure we get through this stuff. But that's just keep that in mind that you can do and sharpen images within within Topaz products also. All righty. This one you can pick. Let's see here what I want to do. Edit in. You can pick these colors, pick by color, and you can pick by by luminosity also. And that is more difficult for me to accomplish, but I will make an attempt at it here. So why did that? Okay. Doing that. Okay. So you get, I've never used the graduation mask builder thing there, but it's there. Luminosity. And so you end up with your masks like that. I don't know if you can if you can see it yet, but the background is not clear. So the instructions are convoluted in my mind, and even though I write them down, they still don't make sense. But if you go ahead and invert and go back over there and go to transparency, and then you use the luminosity and use a range like that, like you can pick the flowers or whatever your subject is using the luminosity or the color, and they both sort of work the same way, and they don't really work well for me because most of the time I have other objects, and here in this case we got a couple dead flowers, some other flowers in the background that still show up on that. And yes, you can mess with the range and try to get them to disappear, but they don't do a good enough job for me. So I generally take the extra time and just go ahead and use the brush. And let's see here.
Yeah, because with the brush, you can brush that.
All right. Do that again. And one of the things that I didn't mention, I should have done that, is the I have to think and talk at the same time. That's so difficult. All righty. There is, if we do it over here, oops, we can do it this way. I didn't do that. Okay. So there's a spot, that spot one, and we can pick the flower at that point. So we can hit apply. But over here, there's a thing called adjust. And you can expand your mask. You can increase the contrast or decrease the contrast. And you can also mess with the density of that. And I've tried to play with that to try to make the color or the luminosity work better. And sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. So it depends on how much my concentration is and whether I want to, how much I'm going to work on the image, whether it's a favorite or what. Well, actually not a favorite because they don't become favorites until I complete them. So, okay, so that's on that. Let me try to think here if I had some other notes for something else that I was.
Bob, did you show us how to apply the swirl?
Yeah. I did.
Okay, I missed that.
You did. Sorry about that.
I must have been sleeping. I apologize.
Yeah. Well,
It's been a long Monday.
yeah. We're going to come on to that. We'll show you that. In this one here, I suppose we can see what happens here on that one. But you basically you're going down and it's a motion blur. And you can, instead of zoom, you can do a swirl. And it's that simple. Now, that's probably not what you wanted to see, or, you know, that's not what you wanted for. Now, I haven't put the mask on this thing yet. So that's why the flower in the center is being doing all sorts of weird things. And that might be what you want. And I've used it that way, but then there's other times that you just go ahead and take that mask and copy it. And go up here to the blur, paste the mask. So now that mask is there. So if we come back up to here. And so now our swirl is going around. We're staying, that flower is not moving. Notice how, remember before it was all moving and contorted. So this way, now one of the things is you can see that there is almost like the opacity isn't all the way up to the one. And that's because that luminosity mask or the color mask don't do as good a job as the brush. And that's probably just due to me not ordering it or not doing it the way that I should. So does that sort of answer that? That was Grace, right?
Yes, thank
Okay.
you.
All right, who's talking back there? Someone's talking. All right, so we're gonna get rid of that and that.
We're not now.
All right.
Bob, sorry for
Yes.
the interruption. If
Yeah.
you wanted to put a second twirl somewhere, you would then just go up and just add another mask, or excuse me, add another filter.
Yep, I think the next one is going to do that.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. All right, where did? Oh, all right, well, there. No, not quite the next one, but this is one I just shot here the other day here, and this is a sedum type of thing. And one of the features that are in the topaz, that's not exactly the twirl, but it's something that's very powerful and I think really nice, is that you notice on this flower here how it's got all these spines on it, if you will, or hairs type of thing. And they have this thing called precision detail. And then you can have a choice of doing it overall or shadows or highlights. I just use it overall if it looks like in this case that's what I want. So you can just take that slider and just look at those hairs grow. And then when you put those into your swirl filter, now those, I probably went overboard on those, looking here now that it's finished processing. But it does have that powerful detail, and you can get into medium and large. For medium and large what am I want, detail. And even at the bottom, you can go into mid-tone, shadows, highlights, black point, white point, stuff like that. So that, and then we can, I can go ahead and swirl and zoom that type of thing. But having that fine detail gives you a lot more ability to come up with some unique images when you can pick up that feature, besides making it sharper, but to make all those nice long hairs. And then the zoom feature makes those even more prominent. Okay. And I'm just going to forget that one. All right. All right. So here's where we could do some multiple. What am I doing here? Some multiple swirls. All right. So I'm gonna add my motion ones. I cheated on that one. Now, one of the things that I didn't talk about is on the zoom. Now, see how that is, it seems like the zoom is coming from 4 different corners. That's because it is. This little tool over here, this position tool, is strictly a plus sign. And you take that plus sign and you put it where you want. And you put it up in the top right corner, it does that. You put it in bottom corner, it does that. So you can change where your leading lines are going to, where you want them to go. And so if you put them right on the flower, you can get those zoom lines coming out of the top type of thing, or you can put it in top and point those down. So just that one little tool gives you an awful lot of flexibility as to how your lines are going up to your image. Okay, so we're going to do oops, I forgot to put in my copy in my mask. Okay, so since I moved it some, then that's the original in the center, and then that's the first one. So if we then add another motion blur, these gets a little bit tedious, but I just don't know of another way to do it. So we paste and we go back up there, and you can go back in the list here. You can go back and edit different sections, but you're not gonna, if you don't remember which one does which type of thing. So I'm gonna go to the swirl. And it's a matter of seeing how I did that, Dick. You're just using the corners to make it bigger and smaller. And then go ahead and make more swirls.
Thank you.
Yep. We'll get another one of those when we work on the final one here. All right. You know, look at the quality of the flowers here on this image. Yes, the one at the tops, those look pretty good, and some in the middle look good. But look at all the other ones that are dead that the gardener didn't go in and cut down and manicure, all that stuff. So part of this is necessity, where I'm a photographer and I'm not a gardener. And so flowers do die. And so somehow they either fall off or you got to take them off. So that's why that picture is there, just to show you that doing the swirl and the zoom removes those eyesores, and that the normal photographer would need to go out, and I do carry clippers with me to pinch off stuff also, but those just become a little more difficult. So, alrighty, so this is the last image, and all right, see if I can remember. All right, so we're going to do the same basic steps. All right. All righty, now, so I have chosen on, this is the one that Sharon had asked for how to go about doing it. And so I've got the motion blur, and now I want to use the mask. And so I had picked these better yellow flowers, and I think there's 6 or 7 of them. So this will take a second or two. But you can do any ones. You don't have to pick all the same color. I don't know what made me pick them all the same color when I originally did the image, but this is an upside down one, but that's fine. That just adds a little more detail, makes it look more natural. Okay, oops. Now we got this red one up here, and that's what I want to be my main subject, if you will, would be the red zinnia here. So we're going to take the same brush on the same mask, if you will. And then I gotta make it a little bit smaller. If you can remember all the settings, sometimes that would save you some time, but if you had a trackpad, then you could draw straighter maybe than I'm able to draw with the mouse. Okay, so we got a stem, we got a red flower, and we got some yellow flowers. You can see their spots there. Right, there's 6 of them. Alrighty, and so then we're gonna go up and hit motion blurs. And we're going to, right now, even though it's set at, the zoom is set at 20, that's the base mark, if you will. And we're going to move that up to 30. Okay, and so that gives us the colors and the lines that we're looking for. That's what I had, took me quite a bit to try to come back to that basic size. And then we want to add another motion blur, but because that's where the swirls are. Oops, I forgot to, I always seem to forget to copy my mask. Sorry about that. All right. Paste. So we've got the all that there now. Oops, we're gonna take here's my position thing here, my zoom, and we're gonna put the focus point right there. And just by moving that, that position tool, we're able to pinpoint where the leading lines are going to go to, and they're going to go to that red flower. You could have it go anywhere, but that's just the way that I had done that. So, all right, so now we're ready to do the swirl. And the swirl took a while to figure out also, but the swirl was over here like this, thereabouts anyway. There. What's not, something's not right. Now, notice on the right hand side here that as I move the big mask thing up and down, that we have 1 red flower or we have 2 red flowers. Okay, that was one of the hints for me to tell which went where. But that's because the outer edge is cloning that flower, and that's the sign of it right there. And actually you can get those 2 heads together and have 2 stems. Now, something is wrong. Well, I'll just punt. But I'll show you the final one. That's how I can do it. All right, that's the way I did it this morning. And that's what Karen had seen last week. And with the flowers lined up to the yellow orange flowers were lined up to go towards the red. And that has something to do with this. I know why, I bet. No, I thought that was it. Maybe is on the angle, but something, I messed up some little detail. Oh, I know why. the swirl's only supposed to be 3. Ah, there it is. I said they line up. Well, they line up if you put the right number in for the swirl angle right here. And you can see just a couple digits, make all the difference where they line up. And very subjective as to where do you want to bend in this thing, in the curve, if you will. You can do whatever, and whatever floats your boat, like I said, and you could put 10 people there give them the same instructions, and they would still come up with 10 different images. So that's it, except for any questions.
Bob,
Yes.
thank you so much.
Well,
You have done a wonderful presentation.
thank
You
you.
have not only inspired me to try to use my Studio 2, which I've never looked at till now,
Aha.
but
Yeah.
you've given me the confidence to know that I have a starting point. I know a little bit about how to work it, and I can't thank you enough for that.
You're welcome. Yeah, and you do nice flower pictures, and so this gives you a chance to take them beyond, on just a regular flower picture. You can do something, go beyond with the artwork on them, type of
I
thing.
will be doing that.
And I'd be interested in seeing other ideas. By the way, the Topaz, there is Topaz Labs is their website. I'm not a salesman for them. The Topaz Studio 2 is a free program. It's kind of weird, but they'll try to sell it to you for $99, or you can get a free trial, and you don't end up paying for it. The other programs, they have some other programs, they have bundles that go for $100-150 type of thing, and they run license goes for a little more than a year, and then they're like $99 to renew them. But they have a fantastic program. The denoise works very good, which does that denoise. And the gigapixel, I've been using some, as I have found in my portfolio here, that I had images. The only copy of images I have were the ones that I used to use in Camera Club. And those are 1050 by 900, whatever those were, I think that, but they're basically a 0.05, yeah, 0.5 megapixels there, megabytes. So they're not very big images, but you can take that and you can increase it by 2, 4, or 6, or 8 times and come out with an image that looks like it was new in terms of the right size that you wanted to store. Then they have this sharpen, and the sharpen is kind of neat. I was able to, I didn't remember to pull it out, but there was a picture that I had shot of a garbage scow, for lack of a better name, but it was a boat that was next to us when we were in the Netherlands. We were on a nice fancy long boat, Viking boat, and in this in the locks, there's only room for 2 boats side by side, and that leaves about 5 inches between each side. That's how much extra you're on the boards on one side, and the other side you're about 5 inches from the other boat. And this case happened to be a boat that was full of in his open bay there, he was full of metal, but it didn't smell like metal. It smelled like terrible garbage. And it was at sunset, after sunset, there was the lights on in the lock, and this thing was just, I wanted to get a picture of it because just all the metal stuff, and it was really texture type of thing. It was really neat. And but my speed was really low. I had high speed on the ISO, and it was still blurry. And I put it in this Topaz and sharpener, and I actually came out with a sharp picture. It was just unbelievable how good it works. And it uses AI technology, as a lot of their stuff is now using AI, and they you're able to, it picks for you, or you can pick the original, then there's one for motion, then there's one for soft focus and out of focus. And so it picks the right one for you if you want it to pick. And then it's got very blurry, and so there's a bunch of different stuff that you can go and just let the AI pick it, and it does a very good job. Or you can go in and override it and do it that way. But that is a program that I now have no fear of taking an image, and if it's not sharp, I don't necessarily throw it away anymore, because I've rescued images while I've been doing this project, but I've been rescuing images. So, so like I said, that's, any other questions?
Oh, thank
Bob,
you.
just a quick comment on the Topaz Sharpen.
Yes,
If you, on the right-hand corner, there's a top, there's a thing called view. And you
Yes.
can pick 4 views, and one is the original. And the other
Yeah.
3 are things like motion blur, out of focus, and soft focus. And it does all of them, and you can pick which one you like.
yes. Oh, yeah. Yep. I don't know if I was gonna find it, not, but I was just wondering whether I could find that that picture, because it was phenomenal in terms of
While you're
anybody
looking
hit-
at, while you're
any other-
looking for the image, Bob.
what's
sorry.
that?
No, while you're looking for the image, I want to thank you. I'm not a very creative guy. This gives me a little hope.
Yes, because as Dick knows, I've not been a creative guy either for very many years here. But he also knows that I didn't always follow the normal path that everybody does. So I'm not afraid to venture out, and since on my own, and since I've been sort of stuck here doing not going places, then I've been trying to make my use. My wife says, you put way too much time on your computer. And I said, yes, I know. But that's what I do.
Thank you, Bob, for your presentation. It's been most inspiring and fascinating.
Good. So not interrupt, but this is the garbage scow. Now, can anybody see anything sharp there?
The back wall.
The back wall, yes. Yes. Now, notice that was at a 20th of a second at 1600 ISO.
On moving boats.
Well, they weren't really moving. We were in the lock.
Yes, but the water in the boats, you're never quite still on a boat.
That's correct. Yes, that's correct. So I put it in, and let's see here if it's gonna. Now I switched it on you.
Wow.
Oh, yeah.
Before and after. And like I said, you wouldn't, it's not an image that you would use unless someone picks that we're gonna have garbage or weird stuff in the competitions or critiques, but it just does, it does a fantastic job. Not everyone, but But there's actually at the bottom of the image that you're looking at there, in Topaz Sharpener, there's a happy face and a sad face, and you can happy face that's fine. They're happy with that. But if you put a sad face, there's a plot for comments and for you to say, well, it's got artifacts. It's still blurry. It didn't do anything, or it's fantastic, type of thing. You can put your own comments in, and they do pay attention to them.
Bob, I've had the Topaz suite of everything for a long time, and I keep upgrading, and I keep thinking, oh yeah, I'm going to get to that. I'm going to get to that. And boy, I am totally going to get to it now. This is time. I've used the AI Sharpen and the Gigapixel, and I've had reasonably good luck with those, but Studio, definitely. Thank you so much.
Yeah, no, I understand. There's a picture of what the garbage boat looked like. It's a nice looking boat, but
just the load isn't so hot.
Yeah, yep. But that's said, but I think it's just something that I've been spending my time doing. But at the same time, I've been culling my images. When I retired in 15 or 16, I guess, what time we were building the house, I had somewhere around 70,000 images. And I'm now down to 47,700. But don't forget, I've gone the Netherlands and Alaska and a couple other field trips. And there's been probably 5,000 images I've shot a year. So, but I keep on going and taking stuff out, and that's why I'm going this way with the unique images, because how many pictures of some of the things, do you going to leave, or whatever you're going to do with them when you pass on, that people want to see, how many butterflies. Yeah. All right. I mean, in terms of flowers, I got 5,000 pictures in my flower category, in my flower folder, 4,400. And there's not one that's identical, but there's a lot of them that are the same, and it's just satisfying to make up something, find something, because you really make. I know Dick says you're making them, the artist, you're making it, but it's a surprise sometimes when you do the filters and then all of a sudden, wow. When I was doing those trees, when I did those driftwood things yesterday, I did not expect to come up with something that was that unique. I just knew that it was a bunch of stems and roots and branches, and that I was going to go ahead and do something with it.
Mhm.